Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So,
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
hello everyone. My name is Dipa Pangestu. At this chance, I will um, presenting my analysis on Liam O'Flaherty's The Sniper using genetic structuralism. So, the Sniper itself is a work of fiction based on present issues surrounding the Irish Civil War as events are still unfolding. The Sniper is a short story. Uh, Basically, it's from 1923, written by Liam O'Flaherty. The story is about a civil war taking place in Dublin with free states and the Republicans in intense atmospheric war. The analysis I'm using is a genetic structuralism approach, which analyzes the structure of the text and relating to the social, historical, and the other background and the other worldview. Moving on to the analysis. So, in the genetic structuralism, there is an intrinsic elements in the sniper. The first aspect is the first person point of view. The characters is the main character itself, the sniper, the enemy, the turret man, and the old woman. The background is in Dublin. The, the exact the exact place is on O'Connell Bridge. The time is World War I, and it's at night. So the background of Liam O'Flaherty. He is an Irish novelist and a war veteran who has witnessed unspeakable death and violence. He is also an Irish novelist and short story writer whose works combine brutal naturalism, psychoanalysis, poetry, and hurtful satire with a constant respect for courage and perseverance of the Irish people. He is also considered as a leading figure in the Irish Renaissance. Like Liam O'Flaherty, however, is an Irishman who served his country in World War One. So the analysis that I found in the Sniper using genetic structuralism is about the aspect that the main character has brought within its author, as the author is a veteran war from the World War One, Liam O'Flaherty itself, the sniper. So in the page 2, there's a quotation: "A man who is used to looking at death." This is describing the sniper. Page 1. I mean, his face was the face of a student, thin and ascetic, but his eyes had the cold gleam of the fanatic. Somehow, after the sniper killed his enemy, he feels weak. The sniper feels weak, full of remorse, and the lust of war in him is gone, and filled with questions of the enemy sniper. Who is the enemy sniper? In the last page, there's somehow a quote that the main character is wondering who is the enemy sniper because this enemy sniper is good at shooting. So, the moment of the revelation, at the end of the story, it was his brother. So, moving on to the background, the social conditions in the World War One, to be exactly in 1921, and between 1921 to 1923, in Ireland and Great Britain was one of turmoil, violence, and political opposition. Debates over religion, home rule, and the Irish Free State what is now Northern Ireland, divided the small island nation into many factions which fought in the streets of Dublin and across the countryside. Amidst the turmoil, Lion Flaherty, a World War One veteran, produced literature which described in vivid detail the horrors of war and the effects of violence could have on both civilians and soldiers. So, like I said before, Liam O'Flaherty is a novelist and short story writer in World War One. So moving on to the mental aspect that I found in the story, that the sniper itself is one of the war victim. In the page two, that in fact that O'Flaherty was a war veteran, he depicts that the main character getting shot in his right forearm and can't shoot the sniper properly. So after he shoot the turret man in the bridge and the woman too. He has been shot by the enemy sniper, and it landed in the sniper right forehand, forearm, like the like at like apa? In the quotation in the page two, it said that blood was oozing through the sleeve of his coat. So it means that the O'Flaherty was depicting that when someone is getting shot, the blood is oozing into their coats or their uniform. Moving on to page 10. War victim. The main character is depicted as a war victim. Even though he is a war soldier, in the end he is interpreted like a war victim. Like a war victim. Like in the page 3 has said that his teeth shattered, he began to gibber to himself, cursing the war, cursing himself, cursing everybody. It means that it means that the main character is like, oh, I'm a war victim. I'm a soldier, but I'm a war victim. I get um, getting shot or lost his family or lost a friend. Maybe lost his brother too. Like in the end of the story. So in the last slide, there's a O'Flaherty worldview that I found in this short story. Again, Liam O'Flaherty was an Irish World War One veteran. In his retirement, he became a novelist. The style of Flaherty sheds light on the attitude with which he viewed the world. An injured veteran of World War One, O'Flaherty was able to describe war-like situations with vivid detail. He clearly understands the concept of kill or be killed. So in here, kill or be killed, this is how O'Flaherty described worldview in the current state in the World War One. So you have to kill or be killed, which many people of the time period could relate to, since every street and town in the country was a potential battlefield. O'Flaherty also describes hunger, boredom, and injury convincingly, one might assume from real experience. So some review that I've read in a website, that in the times that this short story is released, there's so many family that's wondering, is he actually shot his own family or whatever it is. Like when mothers are reading the short story, they are beginning to wonder, is my son is getting shot by his father or something like that. Okay, that's all from me. I hope there is some kind of insight that you will get in my presentation. Anything that you can ask for me, I will welcome it. Someone could ask.
Okay. What the meaning of the mothers reading this story may have wondered if one of their sons had killed another, And soldiers might have wondered if the last man they killed was a brother, cousin, or their father.
Okay, a good question, Dav, or Mr. Dava. Say Mr. Dava. So, like I said before in the conclusion, that World War One, in World War One, there's no uh, there's no wireless communication. So, when the novel and when the short story is released to the public, there's so many who read it, like mothers, fathers, or maybe a family, that the story can be a telltale before sleep. So, what's the meaning of mothers start wondering that his son is shot by his father, by his own father? So it means that there's so much victim in World War One, not only army but a family too. Um, so by saying that in World War One there's no wireless communication, it's possible to get a friendly fire like in this short story. In the end, that the sniper is actually killing his brother, starting from the sniper wondering who is the enemy, but it's actually his own brother who shot his right forearm, and then the sniper is killing his own brother like that.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Okay, maybe it's just one question because there's still so much people will going to presentation. I thought, I hope there's an insight from my presentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Dava Adi Karismawan, and now I will present about my my work is Mark Century in Sweet Potato Pie Short Story. Okay, next. The social class in this short story is according to the Karl Marx, there are two main classes. The first is the richest, a person who owns capital and produces goods. His benefit on his work come from proletariat. Capitals are purchased and sold the working class people, proletariat, through economic policies and production of goods. The proletariat. The proletariat is commonly referred to as the workers. These workers are employed by the capitalism, a capitalist with working hours that do not match their wage. Okay, the next. The short story of Sweet Potato Pie Summary. The short story Sweet Potato Pie is about a family struggle to survive in poverty and how they work together to make sure that the young belong to the school. It is also the story partly love, respect, and gratitude. Buddy is the youngest of five children, and his parents were sharecropped in the south. He rarely saw his parents because he worked so much. Charlie, the oldest son in the family, and Lil, the oldest daughter, took care of Buddy and the other two children like they were their parents. Charlie and Lil basically gave up their childhood to raise their siblings. One day, Buddy's dad told him that he wanted Buddy to get in education so we would have a better life than his parents, and probably a generation before his parents. Had Charlie wanted Buddy to go to school. Soon the family scarpered by year after year. The siblings tried to go to school, but they had to help support the family. But he went to school in old, worn and fried clothes. Sometimes he had a holes in his in his quotes. Because of this, the author gets teaser. Buddy, he decided to make sure he was the best in the class academically and enjoyed outperforming the other student. Eventually, one of the Buddhist children left home to look for work in the north. Also, another one of sibling died. The two even realized the economic strain on the family they were favorable to feed and care for. As a result, there was enough money for Buddy to continue his education and go to high school. He graduated the highest in his class and gave.
Unmute dulu, Mi.
Okay, they threw him whatever money they called for, so he could get a new suit. It was the first new suit Buddy ever owned. His family was very proud of him. Eventually, Buddy joined the army, so he could get money to attend college when he got out. After he got out from college, he went to graduate school, got a job as a professor, married, and had kids. They had a secure and bright future ahead of him. Meanwhile, his brother Charlie had not gone to school and scraped by as a taxi driver in New York. He lived in Harlem with his wife and two daughters. His wife worked in a school cafeteria, but went to New York for a conference and decided to surprise Charlie with a visit. Harlem, Harlem was run down and poor. Even so, Buddy left comfortable there it made him feel at home. Charlie and his family were happy to see Buddy. Charlie's wife made dinner for everyone and sweet potato pie for dessert. Which was Buddy's favorite? Charlie always said that Buddy was someone giving the feeling that Charlie was nobody. In the end, Charlie drove Buddy back to his hotel and carried the leftover sweet potato pie into the fancy hotel for Buddy. Okay, and the next is social class in sweet potato pies. Sweet potato, sweet potato, sweet potato pie is an excellent example of social class difference. The main character, Buddy, is the youngest of five children in a very poor family. Parents in the family work around the clock just the script, so Buddy is missed by his older brother, Charlie. This family situation will not be seen in families from higher social class. Other people in higher social classes don't have to work day and night just to survive. Kids in higher social classes take education for granted. But you don't. He know he was lucky and his brother sacrificed the time available to Buddy. Buddy graduated to school and joined the army so he could go to college. And higher classes don't need to do that. He got a job as a professor and got married. He's better than his parents and siblings. He had become successful and part of the higher social class. Uh, Buddy has life. Okay, wait. Wait. Buddy has life in a both world. First, as the son of poor.
Draft jelas ke endi? Halo?
Se, ngelag
Slide
anjing.
cek mana ini?
Itu nggak pakai slide itu. Itu aku sendiri jelasin.
Masih slide cek konklusi apa sih social class in sweet
Masih itu
potato?
social class, masih social
Yo,
class.
Wait,
Se,
iki
gua
sapa
lagi
iki
ngelag.
sing nanya?
Nggak ada
Sapa
ini.
iki? Bareng.
Aku besok ya izin soalnya. Aku besok izin soalnya nggak usah ada yang tanya. Ntar ya. Next. Buddy has life in a both world. First, as the son of a poor sharecropper with nothing, then as well-educated, successful professor. Charlie was proud of Buddy and regarded him as a belonging to the upper class. Charlie felt he was a nobody. Charlie tells Buddy he has one of his students in his cab. He didn't tell the student that we was Buddy's brother. Charlie said, "Your brother?" I didn't tell him I was your brother. I said, "You're my old friend." Buddy asked why. Charlie replied, "I don't want your student to know that your brother is not concerned than a taxi driver. You're someone." When Buddy goes to Harlem to visit Charlie and his family, he doesn't tell them he's coming. He knows Charlie was going to be in big trouble and was a lot of time getting his house ready. Charlie said, "Good buddy, what are you doing here? Why didn't you tell me you were coming to New York?" Charlie's wife, Dhea, is a bit impressed and upset by the appearance of her house. He asking Buddy, "The place looks a mess. Why didn't you tell us?" Charlie and Dhea are very happy to see Buddy. However, they are worried about how their house will look like Buddy because he's now someone. This shows that Dhea shares Charlie believe that Buddy is a person. They in Harlem remind Buddy of his past. He loved how it felt to be there. The story notes, "Every time I come to Harlem, I somehow feel as if I'm returning to a mystical ancestral home." Very joke, we are sitting in a warm kitchen where Rhea is preparing dinner. It feels good there. A lovely smell is in the air. Okay, Don. Next. The conclusion about this short story. Sweet Potato Pie is one of the most memorable stories I have ever read. This short story is written with a simple storyline that is familiar with everyday life, but give a deep meaning, the theory of Marxism that can be taken for the short story in social class. Brother sacrifice for his sister in sweetened by with conversation between brother and sister, acceptance of limitation, stubbornness, his brother. Oh my god. In the story appearance, as Mark described, Martin plans to change the world from conflict due to class struggle to a classless society where wealth, opportunity, education are accessible to all. Okay? Any question?
No.
Okay.
No.
So next.
Okay, thank you for the questions. My name is Nissa Ariella, and I will explain about the Marxist analysis on Prince and the Pauper short story, created by Mark Twain. Next slide. About the Prince and the Pauper. The Prince and the Pauper was published by Mark Twain. The main characters are two identical boys born in the same day. The prince is Edward Tudor and the pauper is Tom Kenzie. Prince Edward lived in a royal place while Tom was just living a poor life. The story was set in 1547, which was in ancient London. Prince Edward and Tom Candy represents two different sides of life. Next. Marxist literary theory marks on the difference of two classes between the bourgeois or capitalists and the proletariat or workers. The upper class, bourgeois, have a power to lead in every aspect, especially from economical conditions in their society. Their policy is to enslave the lower class, the proletariat, with the bourgeois terms which the proletariat cannot agitate. Marxism was a theory work by Karl Marx in the middle of 19th century, who also collaborated with Friedrich Engels. Marxist means literature reflects class struggle and materialism. Marxists generally view literature not as work created in accordance with timeless artistic criteria, but as a product of the economic and ideological determinants specific to that area. Literature literature reflects an author's own class or analysis of class relations, or however piercing or shallow that analysis may be. The analysis. The upper class. We call the capitalist is the bourgeois, an oppressive class who dominate the economic system. They operate and control the means of productions and all of the wealth, bring harm to the lower class as workers. The bourgeois are more seen as the controller of the productions rather than from their wealth. The lower class. The lower class are same as the working class, called proletariat. It is the labor of productions, live in poverty, and they occupied by the bourgeois for working for the productions. The price that the bourgeois can give to the proletariat is a salary, but they often enslave the workers with their authority. We can say that bourgeois make a harm that proletariat by this. They do not even have any part in the means of productions. Next. Next. After all, Marxist in the sorry. After all, Marxist is the contrast between two classes: the bourgeois with their authority and will to control the productions, also the workers, while the proletariat is forced to be a harsh labor and bourgeois control for earn a wage to survive. We're going into the character analysis. First is the prince. The prince is named Prince Edward, born in the place, born in the palace in England. Lived his life as the crown prince of the rich family Tudor. He lived in a distinguished place with a lot of honor, and many people were joy because he was being born. We can say that Prince Edward is the one of the bourgeois or upper class people who own all of the wealth from the Tudor family. They live with full evidence and materials. The bourgeois is those who control the workers, and as a prince, Prince Edward could be able to empower himself for his guardian and workers to be under his command. The privilege to be born in a rich family is not as difficult as we live along the poverty. Prince Edward had Prince Edward had a privilege as a crown prince to do whatever he wants to fulfill his need or a family needs. Next. The next is the pauper. The pauper is Tom. He was born near London Bridge, living in a poor family in neighborhood with his cruel father. They live their life as a beggar because they do not have any money to spend. The proletariat described with pauperism who had to struggling for gaining salary for them at least to eat. Tom was born in a poor family without any wealth that fall down from his heredity, so he did not own any privilege. Next. Tom or his father does not own anything for money, so they only sell their labors. Even worse than that, they even disguise themselves as a beggar for people to give them money. Their neighborhood was so dirty and bad maintenance since they live near the London Bridge. Proletariat does not have any money for that. We move to conflicts. The conflict happened when the two different persons with an identical face and born dead accidentally met when the prince had been from the stroke. He saw a man like him stood mesmerizingly because it is the man's first time see such a magnificent place. His guardian was about to cast away the man until Prince Edward led the man in to the palace with his decent attitude. We all knew that the man is Tom. Prince Edward was about so curious about Tom's leaving and decided to swap their place. Prince Edward became a pauper and Tom became a crown prince. Prince Edward felt the way Tom felt, where every time his warriors met ill with him, blamed him for this misery. While Tom was heavy-handed, no one believed their masquerades. Nobody could even recognize them because they were identically same. But no longer their disguise will last. The king of the kingdom was dead. The problem started when there must be a crown prince who sit in the throne. Well, Tom is an honest man, so he admitted to the people that he was not the king as they think. People at the palace was mad because this was an inappropriate action. How could a how could a poor man could took over the king's throne? A bourgeois which used to be praised and honored with higher degree cannot be equalized with a proletariat. For them, a bourgeois was sacred and the proletariat was a dishonorable class. The conflict ended after Tom fessed up that he was not the real prince. But then came the real Prince Edward. He closed the situation wisely, then decided to raise Tom as his personal chief advisor and bring his I mean, father's Tom, to justice for mistreating Tom. Next, the last slide. Conclusion. Tom was getting a level up, at least in her own degree. They lived together as a people of the royal palace. Prince Edward and Tom finally get back to their own place with the difference in Tom's positions. Prince Edward have a, Prince Edward have the authority to lift Tom's degree because of his privilege, while Tom got the privilege caused by Prince Edward's status. However, a person's status can be leveled up because of the environment, and once again, the upper class privilege. I think that was the last slide. Thank you. Is there any questions?
I will ask about Tom kan sudah naik statusnya jadi chief advisor. Tapi apakah dia termasuk ke proletariat atau bourgeois? Terima kasih.
Jadi apakah statusnya masih tetap sama apa enggak gitu ya?
Oh.
For me, because karena dia masih bekerja di bawah si Prince Edward as a king. Jadi pokoknya siapapun itu, entah siapapun kaum bourgeois itu yang memperkerjakan seseorang, pasti dia masih termasuk ke proletariat karena si proletariat ini masih bekerja kepada mereka yang degree derajatnya masih tinggi, dan sebaliknya untuk si bourgeois ini mereka memperkerjakan si proletariat ini. Tapi kan untuk di case ini, di cerita ini bedanya, untuk Prince Edward dia nggak yang mempekerjakan secara terlalu too much atau memburu gitu, karena pekerjaannya si Tom ini kan juga termasuk pekerjaan yang agak mulia karena udah diangkat menjadi kepala advisoran. Tapi kan karena pertanyaannya apakah statusnya masih sama, proletariat atau bourgeois, kalau aku bakal jawab kalau Tom ini masih termasuk proletariat karena dia masih bekerja kepada kaum yang lebih tinggi, yang rules all the economical status. That's all.
Oh ya, terima kasih.
Thank you.
Marxism theory in Ghaida Mausupan the Necklace short story. So, I will begin with the social class by Karl Marx. First, the bourgeois or the upper class, a person who owns capital and produces goods for his own benefit and his worker come from the proletariat. Capitalists or bourgeois enslave the working class people or proletariat through economic policies and production of goods. The proletariat or lower class is commonly referred to as the worker. These workers are employed by the capitalists with working hours that do not match their wage. The necklace summary. Matilda Loisel lived in a small flat with her husband, who worked as a clerk for the Minister of Education. Matilda was a very pretty young lady. Neither did they live luxurious life nor were they poor. Matilda was very unhappy because she always thought that she was born for all luxuries in the world, but she had to live a petty and simple life. One day she invited to the gala. She borrowed a necklace from his friend. After the gala, she lost the necklace and they found a similar kind of necklace that cost 36,000 francs. They bought that similar necklace from the money they borrowed from moneylenders. Matilda's life changed dramatically after 10 years. They became poorer and Matilda were able to pay back the money after 10 years. One day, she met her friend and she decided to confess the truth. Her friend was surprised that the necklace Matilda borrowed was a fake, which worth 500 francs. The social class found in the sanctuary the necklace. Quote, no, there is nothing more humiliating than to look poor among other women who are rich. End quote. From the text, we know that Matilda wants to look rich, that she thought looking poor is humiliating, which means she wants to be in the upper class. And quote, Matilda suffered cautiously, feeling herself burned to enjoy all delicacies and all luxuries. She was distressed at the poverty of her dwelling, at the bareness of the walls, at the shabby chairs, the ugliness of the curtains, all those things of which another woman of her rank would never even have been conscious, tortured her and made her angry. These quotes are the same meaning from before. Matilda are greatly suffered because she's from lower class and wanted all the luxury that other women of her equal had. So the conclusion is the theory Marxism that can be taken for this short story is social class. Matilda is in the lower social class and she wants to be in the upper social class because of her beautiful face, and he managed to be at the rich man dance. However, he has to borrow a friend necklace. This proves that even the lower class can enter the upper class if they have something. In this story is appearance. Just like what Marx described, Marxism plans to change the world from conflict due to class struggle to classless society where wealth, opportunity, education are accessible to everyone. And that's all for me. Any question?
I have a question.
Yes, Annisa.
Um, it mentioned that Matilda was born being very beautiful, but she lived in a very poor family. And even when she got married to the husband, she's still in the middle. Yeah, middle class, and she wants to be in an upper class. She wants to be rich. So why do you think she wants to be rich? Is it because of herself, or is it because of her surroundings, people around her, or what?
Saya akan menjawab pertanyaan dari Inas dengan bahasa Indonesia. Jadi, Matilda itu kan cantik gitu. Terus teman-temannya itu pada cantik juga. Jadi ya dia kepengen kaya teman-temannya gitu. Jadi terpengaruh sama lingkungannya dia gitu. Sama dia juga kan diundang ke gala yang dimana orang-orang kaya itu semuanya berada di gala gitu lah. Jadi dia pengen ke situ buat tahu kalau dirinya itu worth it gitu, worth it, pantas gitu di gala. Jadi dia pinjem necklace-nya segala macam, malah dia kehilangan, dia terus dia jatuh miskin dan ceritanya ya seperti itu gitu. Jadi ya lingkungannya itu memengaruhi si Matilda ini, Nas.
Oke, makasih jawabannya.
Oke.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Annisa Widadsari, and in this occasion, I will going to present the analysis of the telltale heart using genetic structuralism as the approach. So, The Telltale Heart is a horror short story written by Edgar Allan Poe in 1843 about a man who killed an innocent old man just because the old man has an eye of a vulture, and the main character felt threatened about it. The main character felt threatened just because the eye of the man, so he killed the old man, and in the end, his crime was revealed because the neighbor of the old man heard the old man's screams, and the neighbor called the police officer. At the end, the uh, the the murderer, the main character, which doesn't have a name, the main character finally, at the end, he finally admitted that he killed the old man. So uh, I will going to explain further about why, in the end, the murderer admits that he killed the old man. So, first thing, when we analysis using genetic structuralism, we're going to talk about the intrinsic elements. So the first one is the point of view. Point of view of the telltale heart is using the first person point of view. So the main character himself narrates the story, and it's like so the narrator is the main character of the story. It's like they're telling us his story. The second one is the characters and characterization. There are about 4 characters, or maybe 7 characters, because there is 3 policemen. So the first main character is the murderer, the man, the narrator who killed the old man. The main character has a unique characterization. We can say unique or maybe weird, because in the beginning of the story, he kept telling us that he is not mad, he is not crazy. He only admits that he is ill, but he is not mad. He doesn't want to admit that he is crazy. So the main character has a very fearful. He's very fearful. He gets scared easily. He is he's a bit vengeful just because you feel threatened, and he is also quite evil. Maybe we can say it evil because he easily kills people, and he is mentally unstable. And the second character, there is the old man who lives alone. He is a lonely old man that knows nothing, actually, that an innocent old man who who is killed by the main character of just because the old man has a vulture like eye. Vulture is like an eagle. So the main character was scared of the old man just because the old man has scary eyes. We can say it like that. And then the next character, the third character, there is the neighbor who who heard the old man screams when the main character killed the old man. And then the last characters, there is policeman. There's three policemen that appears in the end and in who interrogate the main character. The third intrinsic element is the background. So the background of the story is not really written on the story. So I just conclude that the story happens a lot in the old man's house because the main character was trying to get into the old man's house and killed the old man. Um, Based on the writer itself, based on the year where this story was published for the first time, it was in the 80s, 8043, if I'm not mistaken. So I conclude that this story uses the 80s background when it's still 80s, and in America because the author is American. The background of time, it's it happened at night. The main story happened at night. So I can mention that it happened at night on the old man's house in the 80s in America. The theme of the story is a dark or crime horror themed short story. So the next one is I will going to explain why and how did the main character finally admits that he killed the old man. At first, the main character was trying to hide that he killed the old man. So at first, he didn't admit. When the police asked him about the scream earlier, the man said that it was his scream, not the old man's scream. So at first, he was trying to hide the the old man. He was trying to hide his crime, but not so long. The after being the After the policeman got into the house and kept asking the main character what happened, who screamed earlier. The neighbor said that someone is screaming here. So the main character keeps talking, and he continues talking, and it gets very fast because he is nervous. But he was nervous because he said in the story it is mentioned that the main character heard the heartbeat of the old man, which is weird because the old man has already died. So how can the main character heard the heartbeat of the old man? So first, at the end, after he's feeling nervous and keep hearing the heartbeat, which he thought the old man's heartbeat, he finally confessed. He finally admitted. He screamed at the policeman and said that yes, I killed the old man. I killed the old man. So why would he do that? Why would he finally confess when at first he was trying to hide it? So first, it's because of a guilt. So it was the very like reasonable cause because he felt guilty because of killing a man without no reason. Because in fact, actually, the old man didn't do anything wrong, but he killed him. After feeling guilty, he also felt fear because he is haunted by the heartbeat of the old man when it is actually not the old man's heartbeat, not the man he killed, but it is his own heartbeat. So it is the main character's heartbeat that keeps beating fast and fast, and on his ear, it's getting very loud, so it makes him scared because he felt like he thought because like I said at first, he was a bit mad. The main character was a bit crazy, he was a bit mad. So he thought the heartbeat he hear is the old man's heartbeat, but actually it was him because when the old man dies, of course there is no heartbeat of the old man, but it is actually his own heartbeat of feeling fear and feeling scary and nervous because of what he just did. The third one is because the mental state of the main character himself, it is like I have mentioned this a lot of times. The main character was mad, the main character was mentally ill. So, like him killing and admitting in the end shows that he is mentally unstable. It's a proof that he is actually mad, he is crazy. He felt confused, uh, and because of he felt confused because he keeps hearing the heartbeat, which he thought it's the old man heartbeat. So it's one of the proof that the main character is not in a good mental state. He is mentally ill. He is crazy. He is mad. And then there's the plan where before murdering the old man, the main character had a plan, and he thought if he had a plan, that could prove that he is not mad because he said, "How could a madman make a plan?" So even though he planned the murder, that doesn't tell him that he is not mad because at the end we know that he is actually mad because of hearing the heartbeat. He thought it's the old man's, but it's actually his own heartbeat. And now we're going to talk about the author of the Telltale Story. It is written by Edgar Allan Poe, who was born in 1808. And Edgar Allan Poe was famous because of his horror and romanticism stories, reality stories. So Edgar Allan Poe has a tragic background story of his childhood. Died parents and abandonment has inspired him to write mysteries, crimes, and horror stories. So when he was little, Edgar Allan Poe was left by his dad, and when he was still, if I'm not mistaken, 4 years old, her dad left her. His dad left him, and so he's left alone without a family. So his uncle took care of him. But after the tragic childhood, there's some more tragic things that happened to him, which inspired him a lot to write this kind of horror and crimes themed story. Edgar Allan Poe, uh, it is a lot. There are a lot of people mentioned that his life tragedies and unfortunate events was the inspiration of him to write such stories. Although at one time he got successful, in the end, before his death, poverty was still his muse. So Edgar Allan Poe used to be miserable because of being left by his family. But after writing stories, he got successful. But in the end, before his death, he turned into kind of miserable again because of the poverty, because of being poor. Edgar Allan Poe is miserable without parents and with poverty. So, like the main character of the Telltale Heart story, also seems like that he lives alone. He lives in poverty, and he's a bit mad, but not wanting to admit it. Uh, like we all know, some people who's poor can easily get ill, and maybe because of thinking that they're too poor, they get crazy. They easily get crazy. Their mental got easily broken. Like they got easily mental ill. Like I mean, apa sih? Gitu. Dikat aja. And so, like I mentioned before, this story was written in the 80s, and now, based on the genetic structuralism, we're going to talk about uh, the story, what makes the story. I'm going to tell about the correlation between the story and the background of the author, the background of the author's lingkungan, the background of the author's
Environment.
environment. Yeah. So, America in the 80s, there were some events that happened. The years from AD 40 to AD 50 were marked by war between Mexican and American, and then there's political change, a gold rush in California, and many other important events. Those events may cause poverty, deaths, and illness. And it is uncountable of them, uncountable poverty, uncountable deaths, uncountable illness in America. It may also cause unstable mentality to some people that struggles because of poverty, death, and illness. The social condition that is reflected in the Telltale Heart is that in 1840s, the U.S. Census was overly interested in Americans' mental health. There is of the more than 17 million people counted in the 1840 census that 17,456 were listed as insane and idiots. If we talk about the word insane and idiots for now, it may be we maybe we use it to mock people and it's not that serious. But at the time, at AD 40s, insane and idiots actually means that they are insane, that they are mad, that they are mentally ill, they have mental problems. What's the correlation with the Telltale Hearts? Well, like the stories. So the mental state of the main character was shown clearly on how he see the old man, how he feel threatened just because the look of the old man, while the old man actually does nothing wrong to the main character. It is also we can also conclude that the mental state of the main character is not okay based on how he could listen to the old man's heartbeat when he's already dead. It doesn't make sense. He only thinks that it was the old man's heartbeat when it is actually not his, not the old man's heartbeat, but his own heartbeat. In the Telltale Heart, it is mentioned that the main character is ill at first. He mentioned that he is ill, but he refuses to admit that he has gone mad. It is also proven that the main character's insanity was normal because of how easily he kills someone. It is normal for us that we felt threatened like when we see people, but we don't have the thoughts of killing someone just because we feel threatened, right? So the main character is basically he's ill and crazy and mad because how he easily felt threatened and just killed people just like that. So Edgar Allan Poe's worldview. Edgar Allan Poe writes stories in Romanticism, which is inspired by other writers. I forgot the name, but there is a other writer who writes a short story using Romanticism, and Edgar Allan Poe was inspired by it. So, based on the inspiration, Edgar Allan Poe writes in Romanticism combined with uh, his life story, which is a bit tragic and horror, goth horror, and he because of the tragic life he had when he was childhood, it inspired him a lot to write a horror and crime themed story combined with romanticism. Like romanticism means that uh, they write some the author the person who writes in romanticism means that they write something like what they want their life their life to be. So it's like their dreams. Romanticism basically means that we write like what we want, but not like the actual thing that happened. It's the we can say that it's the opposite of realism. So Edgar Allan Poe writes using romanticism and inspired by his tragic life story when he was in childhood. The conclusion of this analysis is that the Telltale Heart story by Edgar Allan Poe is a story, murder horror story based on the the 80s AD 40 situation in America, where there are a lot of uh, where there are a lot of event and gimana sih ulang conclusion. So the conclusion of the story is that uh, the Telltale Heart was written uh, based on Edgar Allan Poe's uh, childhood tragedy. Uh, Not childhood tragedy. Based on Edgar Allan Poe, the conclusion of this analysis is the Telltale Heart stories was written by Edgar Allan Poe, who has a childhood tragedy, and it is written uh, with the background of Edgar Allan Poe when he's in America, and at that time in 80s in AD 40s there are a lot of events um, that can cause like poverty, that can cause deaths, which makes people who affected by it can get mentally ill. They can get crazy. I think that's all from me. Is there any question?
I'm gonna ask you a simple questions. Like, what is the reason you use genetic structuralism theory for your approach on analyzing?
Thank you, Dhea, for the question. So why do I use genetic structuralism to analyze this story? Is because for me myself, genetic structuralism is the hard approach, and I'm trying to understand it better. At first, I was trying to use another approach, but when I see the Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, I was so I was interested in using genetic structuralism because of the story. The story was very interesting, and when I see from the social sociology literature, there are some approaches like feminism, Marxism, hegemony. I don't think that those approach fits this story well, so I use genetic structuralism. And because genetic structuralism is a bit hard for me, I'm challenging myself to use this approach I'm challenging myself to use this approach to the story, which is hard. And I know there are still some things that are I think wrong and not enough, and maybe not clear enough. But because I'm using genetic structuralism, but I hope everyone that see this presentation would understand what I mean. The answer is I'm challenging myself, and because the approach is the most suitable one with the story.
Okay, at school, science this theory is considered to be hard, but you are brave to use this as your base theory. Cool.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Is there any more question? No. If there's no more question, thank you.